So, how should you feel if you can't get into a PhD program? I want to talk about that today because I know some of you are probably feeling very disappointed as you go through your PhD applications and then realize that you can't get into any. So, the biggest thing that I think you're going to feel is how we naturally feel about it. We're going to feel, a lot of regret. We're going to feel like we wasted our time. We're going to feel some form of stigma. Maybe we're going to feel depressed, like all sorts of negative feelings. But I want to actually point out that this is a really, really positive thing that you could not get into a PhD program. The reason why you couldn't get in is that often PhD advisors, you might sort of think about it as like, on one side, you're thinking about it as like gatekeeping, right? And you're thinking about like, oh, I'm not getting into this thing because I'm not good enough. Well, on the opposite side, the job market is really, really tough. So the PhD job market is not what you think it is. It is not easier to get a job once you get a PhD. In fact, it is the complete opposite. It is much harder to get a job once you get a PhD, particularly if you have, nothing to fall back on and all these other, things that you can help out with not getting a job. And the reason is what's happening is you're going to be funneled, you're going to be sort of thought about going into academia. And that's the only job prospect that you are going to be thinking about. And that's the way that the training is across almost, all around the world, right? Any top university, any of the top 500 universities are going to be training you to get an academic position within research because that's how the job market works. And the problem is that there are constraints that are happening right now. There is a lot of pressures on universities to cut back on how much it costs for a tenure track position. So there's tenure track positions are disappearing. As well as the whole academic system is going to go through a revolution because of technology. And this has been going on for a long time. This is not new. Technological progress has been going on for many, many years. And so the demands or the supply is not needed as much in terms of PhD applicants in many universities. And so there is a lot more positions available, or a lot more people seeking PhD holders that are seeking jobs than there are positions available. And it gets more and more tough. There's actually a pecking order that happens or a status hierarchy that happens in universities. Yes, that does exist. And yes, it's very real. And it's based on the number of publications you have, the sort of quality of publications you have, how well known you are, lots of different things. And it's harder and harder to get jobs in different positions. Now, so what's going to happen is that many people can get a job at a community college, for example, and teach, but often you don't need PhDs to go teach at a community college. And so going through all of that effort of getting a job or getting a PhD, which is grinding work, just grinding work in poverty for, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, probably more realistically 5, 6, 7 years. And probably even today, it's more realistically 6 or 7 years. It's just grinding work in poverty because the stipends you get are very little. And you have to be very well prepared for that. I was an engineer, so if you don't know me, I'm Professor Day Masak. I'm Associate Professor of Innovation. And I was an engineer from the top engineering school, in Canada, the University of Waterloo, if not the world, or one of them. And then I decided to go do a business PhD, highly lucrative, right? You might think about. And I did that at the top business school, or one of them, in Canada, and that was the IB Business School. And it was really brutal for me to get a job. It took me 7 years. The 5th year, I went on the job market and I had nothing, and it took me 7 years to get a job. And then even still, it is very hard. You would think that you would have all these jobs, coming to you and all that kind of stuff. This is not what happens. right? And it is very difficult to actually get a job. So you have to be well aware of that. It's not what happens at all. And as you're going into it, you have to be very cognizant. And then if you get rejected, it's often that so there's two sort of takes, right, that I would get you to encourage you to do. The first one is it could be really, really useful, right? And you're just not ready. There is going to be grinding work. Now, the second thing is you don't give up, right? And that's where I want you to think about, if you're really determined and you really care about it, you get up and you keep applying. You apply the next year, the year after. Think of it as med school, right? And you're trying to get into med school. Those students do not give up. They might try 3 or 4 years in a row, and then you upgrade your skills, right? So you can't get into a PhD program that you don't want to get into. Well, then you upgrade your test scores, for example. You go get those. You go and get into a master's program that will make you more lucrative. If this is what you really want to do, you keep upgrading those skills to get into a PhD program that allows you to do the things that you want to do. And it's a journey. So we go through this too. That's why I am stressing this right now, is I go through this all the time. I get rejected all the time. That is the career, is to go through 10 rejections, not just in the job market, but with papers I'm trying to research, everything. It's literally, so these are the acceptance rates in the top journals. At least in my field, it's different in everybody's fields, but you're looking at 95% of the people that are applying with their papers, with their research, get rejected. And so that means there's only 5% that ever gets accepted. And I used to think it was, only people that were not good. No, it's like there's a lot of randomness. There's my papers that I publish or my papers that I actually apply are pretty good. They're pretty good, and they get rejected. So I want you to get that into your head. Rejection, all of that kind of stuff is very, very real, and it hurts and it stinks, but that is part of the process if you want to continue doing it. And so you have to view it as like, I can't get in this year, but I'll get in the next year. I'll get in the next year, and I'll get in the next year, right? And you don't give up. Or if you're not really certain that you want to do this, then you should thank the rejection that you got, because it's brutal. Everybody that goes through this will tell you it is brutal. It is very hard. And the stress and anxiety, all that kind of stuff, you're going to eat yourself up. So just go through this. I was warned when I started, and I want you to be warned as well, just to go through. It's going to be brutal, and you just have to accept that that's what's going to happen. All right, take care. And hopefully this helps you out in terms of determining how you should feel if you didn't get accepted to a PhD program. All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.